Partisan counsel are present, our members of our jury and our alternates are present, and Mr. Hines, you may resume with your examination.
Sure, if you can continue with us, I believe you had left off with the rear shadow of the truck that you analyzed.
Yes, so I was going to start on the back of the vehicle, and I'll start with these frames. I guess we're going to dim the lights here. So, in frames on my computer here, 76 through 79, as I cycle through these, you'll see that there is no shadow back here, or difficult to see. And then as soon as this frame comes on, obviously there's a lit up area here that appears to be like an outline, or the brake lights go on, and we get some kind of a pattern at the back. So, and just to sort of back up, so I'm going to be talking about the shadow pattern at the back. I'm going to be talking about the general outline of the vehicle at the back. I'm going to be talking about the exhaust pipe on the truck, and then I may touch on the this illuminated spot that we see in the video here. So, but I'm going to talk about the shadows first. So I was supplied with a laser scan of the truck, and this was most recently with the brake lights on, and you can see the type of shadow that's created back here by this particular vehicle. And so this is just a scan of the vehicle, and the camera I should mention this, maybe it was mentioned before, but the laser scanner, it scans with the laser first, and then it goes and it takes pictures. And the color that it obtains from the pictures, it transfers to the individual points. So it assigns the red, green, and blue mixture of color to a particular point. So this is point data, this is all point data, but each of these points has its own specific color based on what the camera collected, okay? So this was a two-pronged approach. And so the first thing that I did here was, I said, well, let me trace this on the floor. So if I do this, I'm turning on this little trace. It's just some lines that kind of follow the flow here of the lights at the back. So you'll see that we get this little cut line that's here. And for my purposes, I'm mostly interested in what is closest to the vehicle, because the illumination is brighter, and down on the ground it's easier to see. So obviously as you get farther away from the vehicle, it's going to be difficult to see the shadow, right? So I'm focusing in on this area right about here, even though I've traced it a little bit farther away.
You're indicating, if you can't see the mouse, to the center right of the... Sorry. You're indicating to the center right of the truck, just to the left of the ruler on the ground, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So just right in here. Now, another way to approach this is to say, can I create the shadows using 3D lighting, so lighting in like a 3D environment. And so for that is also possible. So I'm going to shut off the trace, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on a ground plane. So I have to turn something else on, and just let me make sure that everything is okay. Okay, so what I've done now is I've created a 3D model. So let me shut off the point cloud, the laser scan data of the vehicle, and I've got this model here, okay? So I've modeled this based on the data, so it's very, very close to the point cloud data. So if I turn it on, this is the truck. You see how it kind of blends in some places it's a little bit farther out, a little bit in, but it's basically a replica of the side of the vehicle, and I need that in order to cast shadows. So when I shut it off and on, I'm just going to go over here, and if you watch, I'll go in closer. If you watch this area that's down here, you'll see that I've recreated the shadow in that area, okay, closest to it, quite closely, like really, really close. Okay, now it's not perfect, it's not going to be 100% perfect, there's some little tiny things that are different, but the overall shape, scale, and measurement is consistent with the outline and what was actually documented on the truck, okay?
You said you created a shadow. Can you explain that process?
Sure. So one of the things that you can do in 3D is you can add lighting. Okay, so if I can show you how that would change. So if I shut this off, and I have little lights here, and so I've recreated the shadow based on the scan data, and this light, you'll see if I move it, it changes the shadow. So if I move it up and down, you'll see how the shadow starts moving. Okay, so the position of the light will have an effect on the shadow, as will the individual components. So if I take the bumper or something and I start moving that in and out, you'll see that it starts to cause differences in the shadow and shape and that sort of thing. So now I'm not trying to recreate the lighting. I'm not trying to say, hey, this is exactly how the lighting was. What I'm interested in is the shadow. Okay, that's my focus, is the shadow. So I'm placing the light where it agrees with the shadow, where it was documented on the Chevy truck. So one way was to do it with just tracing lines. Another way is just to do so the shadow is consistent or the same as what we had in the scan data. Okay, something that came up just recently that I was informed about had to do with the position of the housings at the back of this vehicle, like on the box at the back. And so my understanding is that previously they were rotated a different way. So they were rotated this way versus that way. So I was really only informed of that just a few days ago. So yesterday I requested to go see the vehicle because I wanted to see what effect that would have on this model. So the only data that I had originally was the scan of the Chevrolet truck with the shadows.
And Your Honor, I'm going to object as the lack of discovery on this change in information provided to the expert, what that is and what it entails.
So all this stuff we covered last Thursday in cross-examination with Mr. Smith.
Overruled at this point.
What I can do is, when I looked at it yesterday and I looked at the positions, so on the truck, there are mounting holes that show the original position and where it is right now was fixed in that place. So basically what I did was took a measurement of what the difference in the bulb position would be. So what would the position be of the bulb where it currently is versus where it was before, okay? And in doing that, I can test in my model to see what effect that might have on the shadow, okay? So what would the original vehicle possibly look like by testing it this way? And so what that means is I have to take the, if we just consider this corner, the rear passenger brake light, I have to move it towards the outside of the vehicle or to the right by 2 inches, okay? So what I want to do is show you what the effect of that is. So I'm going to move back here. And what I'm going to do on the bottom here is I'm just going to create a marker, a point, okay, that's going to tell us where this shadow is right now. So I'll create a point, and I'm going to put that point, gotta do it here, shut that off. So I'm going to create a point right here on the line, okay? So I have a point, it's very big, I'm going to make it smaller. This is in feet, so I'll just do 1 foot. Okay. So, oops, excuse me. So that's the point that marks this edge of the shadow, okay? Now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take the light that's up here, and I'm going to move it to the right by 2 inches, okay? So I'm going to go there, and I am going to go, let me just see here. There. So I have to go 2 inches to the right. You'll see it jump. So you just saw how it jumped? Okay, and you'll see that the shadow has slightly changed down here. So if we go down and we check this, I'm going to take this point now, and I'm going to drag it towards the shadow, and it's going to tell me what the distance is down in this area. So I'm going to take this, and I'm just going to drag it over here. okay, and you're gonna see that it says, oh, you know what, it's in feet. Let me undo that. Let me put it in inches because I think it'll be easier for everybody to visualize. Okay, let's do that again. So drag it over, okay, and you'll see that it says 1.59, okay, so just 1.5 inches, okay. So it would be reasonable to assume that if that light was moved 2 inches over, just over like that this shadow is going to move a little bit by 1.5 inches or so, okay, roughly 1.5 inches. Now, what I've done from this point is I've brought this into the 3D reconstruction. Okay, so I want to show you how it compares to the video.
If I can ask a point of clarification for you, the data you got was the scan and photos of the truck in 2015, is that correct?
Yes.
And then the more modern or more recent scans from 2019, correct?
Correct.
Was there any data available to your knowledge of the exact condition of the truck or its taillights or any other features of the truck from 2010, such as in photos or Faro scans or anything as such?
No.
Okay.
All right. So moving back here, okay. Now, so understand that what I'm showing you now was the original position that I had, not the 2-inch moved shadow position. So please keep that in mind. So what I'm going to do here is a couple of things. So first, I'll turn on the vehicle. Okay. And then I'm going to turn on the trace of the shadows here. Okay. So from the outline, the lines that I've created, they're in the same spot relative to where the back end of the truck is. And so as I move this forward and back, the shadow will follow. Okay, so this is one way to do it as a check, so you can turn it off and on like this. And so if I move this over and zoom in, if you look right here and you start looking at the trace, okay, you'll see it's something like this. So from this perspective, even if I move the shadow over 2 inches, okay, so the shadow, this part here, you can see it's very hard to see, but if you move this over to the driver's side by 2 inches, or 1.5 inches actually, it would be very difficult to detect, okay? So it's well within a margin of error. I can't see down to 1/2 inch or 1/1000th of an inch. We just don't have that kind of clarity in the pixels, right? So if it moves a couple of inches, it's difficult to detect. But you'll see that no matter what, the general shape, position, and the outline is the same, okay? Now, another way of looking at this is with what I showed you before of putting the lights and projecting the shadow on the ground. Okay, so in this case, what I did was I have a ground plane, okay? So this here, if I move out of position, let me just show you what this looks like. This is actually, can you see the curb? Or there's something else on here, let me shut this off, excuse me. There we go. So you can see the transition between the asphalt and the curb, the actual in between, and then this is part of the driveway leading up this way. So this reflects the actual geometry that was measured by the laser scanner. Okay, so it's actually, if I move back this way, you'll see how it's angled. See how it starts to rise up here? Okay, it's a little different. Now, what I can do is, just a moment, is this. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I have the shadows recreated. So now it's the lights projecting down onto the model of the truck and placing a shadow on the street and on the curbs and that sort of thing. So if we move back to position here, okay, what I'd like you to do is just look at this particular area. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, okay, and I'm going to turn this plane, this ground, off and on so you see how it looks with the underlying video. Okay, so there. So I think you can, I'm hoping you can see that. It's much, much clearer on mine. Maybe on these ones they're clearer. Okay. So again, the shadow, that cut that we see, okay, that corner that we see in here tells me that it's consistent with the shadow that's being produced here. So I think I'll leave the shadow for now. I think I'm done with the shadow. I've showed you 2 ways in which I've looked at it. One with the trace, light by a couple of inches, and it has a smaller effect on the shadow on the building.
Actually, if I could ask you to go back into the 3D model where it's superimposed with the video, where you change like the bumper and the light position. Can we go back to that for a minute?
Right here.
So if you come out to that, you moved the bumper and it showed how the shadow changed as you moved it in and out away from the truck.
Mm-hmm.
This truck appears to have a unique characteristic, that little box on the back of the right side. How would moving that box affect the shadow in this analysis if it was moved?
Well,
Protection relevant.
well, if you move it this way, you'll see you get this shadow here.
This way being right and left?
Right and left, right, driver's side to passenger side. If you move it back and front, you see it causes this little, there's a hole at the bottom of it, but you see it causes this little piece to stick out. So that's what this little piece is from. It's from the edge of the box here. So if I move this completely out of the way, you'll see you get a very straight transition, a very clear line. But if I put it back, you see you get this little bump here. Okay? And that's due to this box here.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, so let's turn this off, or let's go back to this video here. So I'm going to shut off the ground plane and the video. I think I'll discuss the exhaust or the tailpipe here. So I'm going to shut off the video, and as we zoom in, the last few frames when the brake lights go on, you'll see that there's a clear distinction between this bottom part of the vehicle. You have a space, then you have another space, and then we start getting shadow or ground. Okay, and there's this object that's sticking out here. And as you cycle through this, okay, here you can see there's a line, and it looks like it's in this image it's bent. Even over here in this frame, it looks like it's bent. Okay. Now, when I take the vehicle and I superimpose it back into position on the street, you'll see that we get the exhaust pipe is here. So if I zoom into this position and I turn it off and on, okay, you'll see that it lines up with this dark, I'll call it a dark object. Okay, that's in that area. Well, it appears to be an exhaust pipe. If we go back a couple of frames, or even through all those frames, we get the same thing. Now again, we don't have great video here, right? So it's pixelated, whatever, but you can still see that the size, the position, and the geometry is consistent with what we have on this vehicle, on this 2000 Chevy truck. And like I said, that's consistent on these frames. Now, I didn't continue the analysis because it starts to go off and it becomes more difficult to see. But in the subsequent images, like on 80, if I go in here, so if I continue off past where I looked at, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can see here now it starts to go off in these last couple of frames, the shadow and such. I didn't bother with these frames because I'm not really seeing it, and it's going off out of view of the camera, so it's not really the best frames to look at. So I don't think I need to say much more about the exhaust pipe. The only two other things remaining here for me are the outline of the vehicle. So here you can see that it stops at this point. So if there was a skirt here, or there was something else that was lower or beyond what this vehicle has right here, we would see a dark spot. Right? At least that's what we're seeing now. You would expect to see some darkness or something there. So I'm just going to turn this off and on, and I'll let you see where that happens. Again, I think it's clear on the TV monitors. This projector is not very bright, but especially down when the shadows are engaged, you get the dark transition between light and dark is in the same place. Okay, so the outline of the bottom here of the vehicle seems to be consistent with the shadows or the dark spots in the video. Lastly,
if I can ask real quick about the tailpipe, did you also do where you know how you drew the shadow on the ground? Did you do a similar process to see if that image aligned by drawing like a line around what's in the suspect video and corresponding to the truck?
Well, No, I mean, so I have the exhaust pipe in the 3D data, in the laser scan data. So when I turn on this truck, what you're seeing is the scan data right now. This is the truck as it was documented and scanned, and so it's there. It's a projection of the vehicle. I didn't have to move anything. I just put the vehicle in place, and then I'm just shutting the vehicle off and on, and you're seeing the underlying video. That dark spot in the video lines up with the exhaust pipe. That's really all I'm doing.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's no other method that I'm using other than just looking at the transition between off and on.
Thank you.
Okay. So the last and final thing is going to be this illuminated spot, and that's what I'll call it for now. It'll be here. And what I'll do is I want to cycle through these images. Actually, I'll use the higher res images that are here. So if we go backwards and we start following this vehicle through, when you can first see it, it really becomes apparent in this one frame. And here I have it at frame 58. And you'll see that there's a bright spot there. It's quite illuminated quite well. Then when you go forward, it goes dark. So now it goes dark, but it's just very faint. And I don't know if you can see it on that one. If I go back, you can see it on my screen. So it's visible on my screen, but it's very faint. But as I move forward, you'll see that it becomes brighter and brighter. So I'm going to go here. It's going to start to get brighter. You see coming in, and it gets brighter. And as we continue on, it gets brighter, brighter, and brighter. So if I go backwards, you see it dims, and there's a flash, and then it disappears because it looks like it's under the eaves, or just we can't see it. Okay. So this particular spot, if you look at where it is here, I'm going to go back to the 3D, and I'm going to turn the truck on. So if I go to the last few frames, and I move in on this area, just look around this area here. What you'll see is there's the bright spot. Okay. Now that bright spot happens to coincide with a latch, which is on the side of the vehicle. This right here. So I didn't do any type of analysis. This was after we were just talking about this, and we said, what is that? What is it? A light? Is it a brake light? What could it be? And the only thing that I can say is that it is closest to the latch that's on there. And so it's not inconceivable that the latch could be causing some type of reflection. Okay, so, and the fact that you can see the vehicle, when it first comes into view, you see it bright. Then it keeps moving, it goes dim, and then it starts getting brighter again. Okay, so just before it exits the screen, it's bright again. So what could be happening here is that there are other lights on in the street, a street light or house lights and things like that. And when it was farther away, there's something shining on it, okay, that illuminates it. And as it starts moving, it moves out of the way of this light, and it starts transitioning into, it gets brighter and brighter and brighter because there's another light that's illuminating it. Okay, so it's quite conceivable that that is what is happening. There are certainly lights on the street which could cause that. I can show you, if we move around the street here, there's some kind of a spotlight. So this is the neighbor's home with the security camera. And over here, there's like a spotlight that's pointed right at the vehicle. I don't know if it was on or off, or if it was even casting a shadow, but I'm just pointing out that there's lights here. This one is behind a bush, so it's somewhat blocked. There's another light here at the front of the house, and there's a street light right here. Right, so, I don't know. I don't know what the explanation is or why. I mean, there's the porch light as well, right? So it could be coming in. Maybe the porch light is casting something. I don't know, but I think you can see from this respect here. If I zoom in and I turn this off and on, it looks like it's just something coming from the latch. And another thing that I noticed, and I'll just make this one comment, is that in some of the photos that I've seen of the truck over the past while, those latches, they get stuck open or they're loose. So there was one that was like flopping around, and even yesterday, and the one that's back there was open. It was hard to close for whatever reason. I don't know. So again, it's not inconceivable that back then an old truck, it's a work truck, maybe gets beat up, you know, the handles might be a little bit hard to open or close, or sometimes they get stuck a little bit open on a
And
slightly
Your Honor,
different
at this
angle.
point, this is all speculative, and I'll move to strike at that point.
So that's pretty much a summary of the analysis that I've done. And if
If I may ask, if you backed up a few frames, when the headlights hit the water main cover in the street, did it also have some reflectivity?
here, yeah, you can see it.
There's also a glare that's being created off of the cement of the driveway and the sidewalk, correct?
That's correct.
So after conducting all of this analysis, what conclusions could you draw from the evidence that you were provided?
I'm just going to go to my report because I think it summarizes it pretty well. And I'll go through each of the points. The first one is that the position of the headlights, I showed you the ellipses, and I showed you how the headlights are positioned within those ellipses. And so the headlights on the 2000 Chevy truck is consistent with the position of the glare that we're seeing in the video. Okay, that is consistent. The glare that we're seeing off the bumper at the front of the vehicle, I compared the height of where those were located on the vehicle down to the ground, and that is also consistent with the range that we found on the 2000 Chevy truck. The other thing that we found was the shadows. So I showed you the shadows at the back of the vehicle and how they make this specific shape. And I did it through a trace, and I also did it through simulated lighting, and I showed you the effect of moving the light a couple of inches. That is still consistent with what we're seeing in the video. I also looked at the outline of the truck at the bottom, and you can see that it falls very close to where the dark spot starts and where the transition to the lighted portion is, where the brake lights come on. You can see through that area. And so if there was a skirt there or something else, we would expect something to be blocked. So that also appears consistent. The exhaust pipe, I think I've shown you the overlay between the two, what happens when you put the truck in place on the video. That is consistent. I think that I've shown you that this illuminated spot appears to be a reflection, or at least the spot appears where the latch is. Okay, that's the closest thing that it appears to. Based on that, all these features are consistent with the 2000 Chevy truck. Now, having said that, okay, a truck that is similar to this one, so if it has the same configuration at the back and it has the brake lights at that spot and it has the same kind of bumper, it's the same model truck, that could be consistent as well, right? That's possible. It would have the same geometry, the same features and everything else. So I can't make an identification with the evidence that I have. I can't go in and say, well, look, you know, I can tell exactly that it's this 2000 Chevy truck. All I can say is that this model truck that we have is consistent with all the features that I've pointed out in the video. Just one last thing, and that is, if you're looking at how strong the evidence is, and let's say we just take an example of DNA or even fingerprints. Normally what they do is they identify a number of different features. Let's call them features that are the same. And if you were to look at all these features individually, and you were to give them a weight, let's say you said we're gonna say the headlights get 1 point, and the bumper gets a point, and the exhaust pipe gets a point, just for the sake of argument. In the end, if you were to just sum up the total, you would end up with 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. When we're doing these types of analysis, the more features you find, they compound, right? Just like with fingerprints or with DNA, the more you find, the more they compound. And so, can you find a number of vehicles that fall within the headlight pattern of of what we found here. There's probably plenty. But now when we say, well, but does it also have this, the exhaust pipe, the back outline, the list starts to drop off pretty quick, right? Okay, so that's all I'll leave you with, and I think, unless there's other questions, I'm done.
I have no further questions on direct.
All right, you can resume your seat up at council table, I'm sorry, at witness stand. Did you wish to start your process about 11:45? Did you wish to start your process?
Sure. Yeah, we can start.
Sure, go ahead. We'll let him get a seat first.
Okay, so, is it Licio?
This year.
Mr. Licio, how many times have you compared a vehicle in a night video with a Faro scan before this?
Just vehicles?
Yep.
Probably, I'm gonna say maybe a dozen times or so.
And when you're comparing that, are you comparing it to a suspected known vehicle?
Sometimes it's actually a known vehicle, and then sometimes it is a suspected vehicle.
Do you have a database of the general layout of vehicles that you can do a computer analysis of to see it could be something else?
Maybe something exists, but I don't.
So you only compare what's given to you.
That is correct.
You can't say, oh yeah, looking at these points, this also could be a Toyota Tacoma. This could also be a Ford F-150. They all have those same characteristics. You don't have that.
No, I don't.
Now, in your initial direct examination, you talked about the problem with bias that affect your analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes,
That'd be like a confirmation bias, right?
that is correct.
And you know what that is?
I do.
It's a tendency to interpret evidence as a confirmation of one's existing beliefs or theory.
That's correct.
So the more information you get about a case, the higher chance of a bias developing.
That is true.
Now, you talked about inclusion. Inclusion, your last conclusion on your report is you can't exclude my client's truck.
That is correct.
What are the factors or criteria for exclusion in your analysis?
The criteria that we can see in the video, which was the headlight, the bumper, the exhaust pipe, the outline of the vehicle, the shadows.
That's for inclusion. I'm talking about exclusion. What would you need to find to say we have to exclude a vehicle? What are things that you would look for, generally?
Well, let's say, for example, the headlights were well below what I've outlined. So I outlined the headlights, and all of a sudden I find that they're 13 inches lower or something like that, and I say, well, it can't be that vehicle. So there has to be something grossly in error.
How about something missing that you would have to see in the video? As an example.
Well,
As an example,
Mhm.
let's just say some vehicle has those little curve feelers with lights on the end or something ridiculous. And you would expect to see that and it's not there. Is that something obvious you can say, that's missing, that can't be this vehicle?
it depends what it is you're talking about, but I can only, whatever is visible in the video, right? If it's not appearing in the video and it's not appearing on the truck, then I can't tell you if it was there or not. But you know what I'm saying?
I'm talking general. So if you have a video of a vehicle, and then you have a photo of a known vehicle, and this known vehicle has those big old wings on the back, and you're looking at the video and you don't see that big old wing, you're gonna be like, something's missing. An obvious missing part is a point for exclusion. Would that be fair?
In some cases, yes. And we're going to make the assumption here that nothing's changed on the vehicle. So nothing has changed, because a missing part could be removed. It doesn't mean that it wasn't there before.
Right.
Okay.
Now, you talked about measurements within a range.
Correct.
Is there a percentage of measurement where you say, this is now exclusion? Do you have any gauge for that?
Well, the problem there is the quality of the video. So it's relative to what is visible, what I can see, and what kind of accuracy I can get from the video, right? If I had a really, really good camera, or if I had multiple video cameras looking at this thing, then I might be able to get down to a very, very fine range. And then I might be able to say, well, look, now I can tell you to half an inch that this is not the vehicle. So what I've done right now is just showing you a number of features that align, and they're within a reasonable margin of error.
Okay, let me ask you, what is your reasonable margin of error based on the percentage of measurement?
Okay, so again, there's no answer to that question. Like, you can't just say, well, I can't. It's 2 inches, and 2 inches I'm going to cancel everything out. No, because it depends on the quality of the video that you have. What if you can only see 1 foot of resolution on the video? Then obviously my range has to go bigger than that. So your question is it's too broad. It's not fine enough. There are too many things, or too many variables that you have to account for.
So what you're saying is there's no rules I can lock you down on a conclusion. You always have to have that wiggle room to say, well, that's reasonable within my range that I've determined without being able to define.
Objection argument is
Sustained.
What is a reasonable percentage range for things that you don't see?
objection asked and answered.
He hasn't answered it yet.
Any objection, sustained.
Your Honor, please move to strike counsel's argument in the
On
comments
this,
and admonish the jury.
on this particular video, did you have a general range for a margin of error? Where on this video, you could say if it's beyond a certain range, then it doesn't match.
Right, so I'm of the opinion that if I'm getting into an area where it's like, several inches, that's when I'm starting to get concerned. If it's a couple of inches or a few inches, depending on the feature that I'm looking at. So for example, the headlamp or the glare, that was a wider range, because that's only what I could measure. So it's specific to the feature that you're looking at, but in general, if you wanted to just pick a general number, it was on the order of a couple of inches, roughly. Okay.
Okay, couple of inches. So some of the characteristics that we know about Merrick's truck that were important. One, the headlights, correct?
Yes.
How about the running lights or the parking lights underneath the headlights?
Yes.
Okay. How about the fact that it has front windows on the vehicle?
I'm sorry, say again?
Front windows, like side windows. Is that an important feature?
The windows?
Yeah.
If I can see them.
Okay. And then the rear storage compartments, the big metal attachment to the back where a bed should be. Would that be an important feature?
Yes.
How about the marker light on the top of that compartment at the end? The illuminating marker light, that be an important feature?
No, because you can't see it.
Well, is it an important feature on the truck? Not whether it's on you can see it on the video. I'm talking about, is it an important feature?
Well, if you're going to ask me any question about is the truck important, the whole truck is important, but in terms of the analysis, if it's not in the video, then it's not important because I can't see it.
Sir,
Yes.
simple question. Is the marker light on the rear corner of the storage compartment
Mhm.
that you can see when you see the truck, is that a important characteristic of the truck?
In that case, sure, yes.
Now the handles or the latches on the side of the compartment, those would be important features that you can use.
Yes.
The passenger side exhaust pipe, that would be an important feature you can use.
Yes.
The rear bumper, important feature.
Yes.
The location where the brake lights are, that's an important feature.
Yes.
The wheelbase, would that be an important feature?
Again, it's difficult to see, but if you're talking about just to the characteristic of the vehicle, sure, yes.
And then the color or material of the body, would that be an important feature?
Again, because of the quality of the video, if I can't detect it, then I can't. In terms of just saying this vehicle is blue or white, yes, I agree with you.
Okay. I'm going to go through a couple things of your report.
Could I ask for a copy of my report, just so I have it up here?
Mr. Himes will gracefully bring you a copy.
Thank you.
Now, on page 3, it talks about the information you received. You received multiple laser scans, 3D laser scans, correct?
That's correct.
That's of the truck from 2015 and 19,
I believe so.
and of the neighborhood.
Correct.
And then you received some videos,
Yes.
and that was the, well, you received multiple photographs, correct?
Yes.
You received videos of the security camera footage.
Yes, it was, I think I listed it, channel 6 and channel 7. And there was a date, at the channel 6, there was a daytime and nighttime video. Yes.
And for channel 7, there's also day and nighttime too, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Now on page 4, you listed a detail, well, a summary of the case background, correct?
Yes.
And so you obtained that information. Didn't that create bias to have that information?
No. Just because you're informed doesn't mean that you have bias.
Did you not testify? The more information you get, the more chance of bias there is.
You said chance. So one of the factors of understanding bias is to realize that there is bias and that you could have bias. And so there's a gentleman called Dr. Itiel Dror, who is very well known in cognitive bias. And I know him. I've met him a couple of times and we had some discussion on this. And so one of the things is that if you're doing like fingerprints or that sort of thing, the more that you know about the case, the possibility is that you want to, push towards a certain suspect or something like that. But the first thing is to say, look, I know this exists, and so you have to say, I have to be careful now about what I do. And so I understand that this cognitive bias exists, and I've done my best to try and avoid it. And so one of the ways that I do that is in my reports, I look at measurements. So measurements, when you take them, it's not just me going, looks like that. I try to take measurements because then I can say, you know what, somebody else can measure it and they may find the same thing. And if they find it slightly different, then let's talk about the differences. But the measurements that I put in my report are what I would say to be somewhat objective.
Since you know there's bias, it can affect you. That's what you're saying.
Objection, argument,
I mean, to say that, it can affect you, whatever, all I'm saying is that I've done my best to try and avoid, going on the internet and finding out about the case or watching videos. I know that there's a ton of media attention to this case, and I can tell you exactly what I've seen on this. And that was, initially, I was told that there was another person who had, I think it was a 402 hearing that had testified. I very quickly went on, but I'm a busy guy, so I can't sit there for hours watching testimony. So I literally took like 2 minutes and I said, don't want to know. And in many conversations that I've had, I've said to people, look, it's not my, I don't know, it's not pertinent to my work, so I don't need to know. And that's the attitude that I've been taking on this case.
So you knew, or were you informed of a report and conclusion reached by Lenny Rudin?
Objection. That misstates evidence intentionally that we approach.
Well, we can answer whether he was aware of the report by Mr. Rudin.
I was aware that that gentleman had testified, but I don't know what he testified to.
Did you review the testimony?
I went online and I literally scrubbed through for like 30 seconds, and that was about it. So I don't understand the gist of what he testified to. Yeah.
Were you provided any overlays or diagrams or anything that anybody could have created in this case?
I didn't have any overlays. I just had the data that I provided here.
So you were not given information about anybody else's work on this case involved in any way, shape, or form?
Well, I understand that Mr. Ryan Smith has testified on this, and also Mr. Mike Russ had testified about the laser scan data, and I don't know who else has testified on this.
And when you say you understand were you told a summary of what was said, or did you watch the testimony?
I didn't watch the testimony, but I spoke to Mr. Smith, and I've also spoken to Mr. Russ, and a brief conversation, like if there was, anything important that came up or something, I don't know, that regard. And what did come up most recently was this, the position of the brake lights, the movement from before. So that's how I knew about it just this past weekend.
Anyone want to stop here?
All right, we'll go ahead and take our noon recess at this point until 1:30 this afternoon. Keep in mind the admonitions previously given to you, not to form or express any opinions about the case, not to discuss the case, and